I can feel myself taking a win on this one because I think it's quite easy to get a fix with George. Sorry. I think George. I don't think he'll take a loss on his, especially not with that.
Well, he's going to nip it, isn't he?
George. He said, "I don't really care about these ones. I just want to see the last year."
That's what he said last year. And
I did very well.
And then you say that.
Yeah, exactly. See, we're fine. He'll probably tell us points to improve, but we'll still probably get good grades because George, I'm not being funny. People have definitely got a lot less effort than that. And you've done, like, some people would have seen the video audio and gone, well, that's it then. But you've done all you can to improve it.
It's just sad because I was really looking
There's a lot of bitching and moaning going on. What's the matter with you two?
Sorry.
I'm not apologising.
I don't expect you to.
Thank you.
I just don't know why.
It just intensify with you
I'm not bitching and moaning. I'm encouraging Jordan.
to bitch and moan.
No, that she's done well. When do we get the grades back? Oh, you don't get yours back yet. Oh, maybe it's a little bit. I do like it.
Also, I looked so dodgy in A. Like filming glasses. I was like, quite blind today. I have to record the
Oh,
Queen
fuck
line
off.
Yeah.
as you mentioned Queen. I didn't realise it was too effective.
Okay, it's just you. That's funny.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, mine student one. Who's that? Who are you? I don't recognize you. Oh, it's Ben, he hasn't got a handle on. Spun me out. Let's see. This is mine.
That's why I don't see that.
I get it.
I do not.
I was talking.
That makes sense.
Just there.
I expanded upon the journey.
My B-roll for this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
really good as well. I filmed in a hotel at 4 o'clock in the morning before getting on a flight.
Good director.
I'll be free from 2. So in the afternoon. Yeah. Reese has got me doing a lecture with his second year group. So yeah,
You're right.
12 till 2 right now.
What do you say? Is that right? Yes.
Right.
Sorry, John, what you say? You're not very well.
Oh, fine.
I don't believe you.
Wait, that's not right.
So,
Back. Edge.
I love those songs.
when do we
They
get our
look
grades
fit.
back, Georgia?
They look like tights.
Why can nobody say that man's name right?
What man?
And then,
Georgios.
Georgios.
It's not hard.
Very nice.
You just called him Giorgio. Somebody called him something fucking bizarre last week. I don't even know what they were talking about.
He's told us his name once.
Very nice.
So,
Georgios.
That's the cat.
gets lost in translation.
I've used all 3 of them.
What, in English?
I
That's what it is.
I'll come out and swear, not using the Ludology. I'd just be like, dude, I've used all of the 3. I'm under a royal flush.
Loads of people are sick. Or just sick of being here.
Right.
I can't quite pick out which one it is.
Something's going around at the moment.
I was not well over the weekend, so yeah.
He just messaged me like, he was like, oh, is he ill?
Ill, tired, or ill. So there's 3 options.
Or just,
Lazy.
you said.
I did. How do we book appointments with you again?
I'm not going to have a go at you, Eve. I'm trying to remember myself. You go onto the hub
Yeah.
for like the
mentees.
mentees hub,
Okay.
and on the right hand side there's a calendar,
Okay.
and you click on that, and then there should be slots. Don't pick
Okay.
Thursday this week
Fine.
because only because I won't be here. We're on strike,
Oh yeah.
so so it's pointless. I mean, I'm not adverse to doing it on Thursday, but it'll have to be over Zoom if that's the only time you can.
Yeah.
But if to do that, just email me and we'll set up a time.
No, I'm fine.
But Monday and Thursday next week
Next week.
is fine, or Monday today.
Cool. There we are. See you at one.
I look forward to it.
And me. Can't wait. Can't
Don't,
wait down the
don't
minutes.
try and contain yourself now. I think this is going to be it. Loads of people have emailed me already saying I'm not here. And I appreciate what they're saying as well. So, an apology to begin with. I got the strike dates wrong last week. We have got a lecture next Monday. Strike days are Thursday and Friday and next Wednesday. So it's worth taking a note of that. If you have anything on a Wednesday, it won't be happening. Well, depending on who is teaching you. Some people aren't going on strike. So,
There's no lecture from Reese for the third week in a row.
that given, how's everyone getting on? Are you all making progress?
No.
Fucking hell. I don't know if you all, like, do you know, like, induction and shit? Right? Did any of you go?
No.
Jesus Christ. Because, like, it would have been said, like, third year, there's a lot of assignments, it ramps up. Was anyone under the impression that this might happen?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, get a fucking grip. Oh, here he is, peg leg. Are we doing alright? Don't be like Dan either, right? Getting smashed up. Like me last year, man. Yeah, who is really struggling here? Anyone else? Feeling the heat? Okay. How many assignments at the moment?
3.
3. Do when?
1st, 6th and 9th.
So ages away. It's only the 21st today. Also, I don't know what the problem is.
That's not ages away. At all.
Who are you asking for help?
Well, I'm
Genuine question.
meet with Non,
Okay.
because she's my supervisor and I'm meeting for this paper.
Yeah, you got that thing in on Friday, okay.
Yeah, fine.
Right.
I mean, I was happy enough with it. We'll see in 3 weeks. But
Yeah, I think people are unduly stressing over this dissertation preparation. I mean, honestly, don't. It's an 800-word piece. I'm marking somebody's in this room this afternoon. I'm going to spend about 5 minutes reading it. If you have done X, Y, and Z, Jessica, I will give you a good mark. Because that's all I can do. The criteria is right there. It just said, have you done this, this, and this? If you've done it, what am I supposed to do? Say, don't like the font? No, it's not going to happen, So please don't stress out about the dissertation preparation. It looks really straightforward to me. Like, easy. Have you had the first marks back yet?
yeah.
Okay.
That's what I said to you.
Oh, you did, yeah.
Non's not like you.
Okay, well, yeah. There's obvious visual cues to that. But yeah, did you have help before?
Yeah. Not from Non, from Joanna, because we didn't have a supervisor
Oh,
at
yeah,
that
yeah,
point.
yeah, alright, so I get that. I can't even remember what the first one was now, so it's hard for me to comment.
Proposal.
Right, okay. Well, there's some luck of the draw. Is everyone in here doing a dissertation?
No.
You're not, Morgan?
I'm not.
Okay, you can go to sleep for 5 minutes, right?
Go for
There's
it.
a lot. there's a lot of luck in the dissertation process, it's like, I kind of told you what to write, right? A little bit. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's my role. You know, it's in my interest for Cheska to get first. Do you know why? So when it comes to May, and I have to mark it, if I know it's already going to be amazing, I know what to mark. I know what mark to give you already. And I will know what mark to give you already, because at the end of March, Cheska's going to give me a full draft of her dissertation. Oh yeah. All 8,000 words. Yeah, and I'm going to give it back to you with 2 weeks to spare before the beginning, and you're going to correct it all, and you will get 75, minimum.
Lovely.
Because I don't see the point of doing it in any other way. Now, dumbass, who's your dissertation supervisor?
None.
And who's your academic mentor?
You.
Okay. So your academic mentor might be able to do the same thing for you if you ask very nicely. Yeah.
Sounds good.
So, look, the dissertation in particular, please take on board this. It is, at this stage, not, you were getting stressed out about something you shouldn't have got stressed out about last week. You do not, at this stage, have to be married to anything that you're going to put in May. All you have to do is meet the criteria of the assignments you're being set. If that changes, so be it. That's not the end of the world. And it will change, I guarantee. Even though you might have the same broad topic. I mean, I wouldn't let you do that dissertation topic because it's too narrow. So,
That wasn't even my thing. Like, I had a wider, I wanted to do something about Welshness in cinema or television or anything on screen.
I wouldn't let you do Welshness because there's not enough academic material on it. There's literally about,
It's all the
I
same
think it's
people
about 10,
writing
it's
stuff.
exactly, it's Rebecca Williams, John Jewell, and a
Steve
couple of other
Ranford.
people. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's it. There's not enough there. And so I would say what you should look at is how Welshness contrasts to other small nation
Yeah.
representations, for example. That would give you a lot more to talk about. But at the same time, you can talk about that stuff from other small nations because it is relevant to your point about Welshness. You know, because you can draw those cross-cultural comparisons when it comes to representations of Wales. And this is not even my area, but this is good advice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the point here, and it doesn't just go for the dissertation, it goes for all of the assignments you're doing, is please ask for help. And it doesn't necessarily matter who you ask for help from. Alright, you're doing videos with Georgios, right? Okay. Show me what you've done.
Yeah.
I'll tell you if you're shit or not.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, I won't hold back.
Yeah.
I will tell you if you're shit or not. But it's not, and I know it's not going to be. I already know that before watching it. But at least I'll be able to give right. I moderated that module. You know, I look.
You actually?
Yeah, I've been moderating it for years, so I know how the marking works on it.
Yeah.
You know, I know what gets given good grades and what doesn't. You know, ask. Ben's looking at me like he's going to fucking kill me. You know, it's please take advantage of it, and it goes for all. I know it's like third year, and December and January in particular crunches. You wait till May.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm not kidding, because this university is stupid, and I mean that, and I'm recording it, because this university is stupid, and it's nothing to do with people in this department, it's actually nothing to do with people in this faculty, even. The university still runs on the principle that there are exams, and there are in some subjects like mathematics, sciences, etc. So we all have to bend the knee to those subjects, basically, which means you have a crunch where everything for third years needs to be in basically a 10-day window in May. If we don't get those things in that window, you don't graduate. It is that straightforward. And we're not allowed to extend it any further because that is examination period, and for some reason that's a sacred period for the institution, which nobody can touch. So we have to get everything in, basically, in, I'd say, it's not even the first 2 weeks of May, it begins at the end of April. I don't even think it runs much longer than the 12th of May. So, like, all of your second semester modules, including dissertation, will be in that period. And if we don't mark them in a 2-week window afterwards, you don't graduate. So it's crunch on both sides. How do you mitigate against this? What do you do? Dissertation's easy. Get the fucking thing done in March.
Yeah.
That's the most simple answer I can give you. You get it done in March, and you will have it back, the whole thing, with notes, with comments, telling you exactly what you need to do to get the mark that I want you to get. I can't say any further than that. How do you do it with the other modules that you're doing? Well, say goodbye to Easter this year. There'll be no bunnies and there'll be no eggs. But if you work through Easter, you won't have a crunch in May.
Yeah.
It is that straightforward. Everyone is in work during Easter. Nobody gets a holiday in Easter. I've never had a day off over Easter since I've worked here. I got to mark fucking... I don't have to do with media history anymore. But I still got to do... There's like 70 fucking second years taking social media. 70 of them. I got to mark 70 videos. Yeah, dude.
What was it like last year?
It was big last year. It was 55, I think, last year.
It's not 70, I mean, Christ.
I know. There's only 81 in the second year. So there's only like 11 people not taking it. I'm going to hunt those bitches down. Say, what is your problem with me exactly? Why don't you like me? What is wrong? Why don't... I'm definitely hunting those fucks down. But also, it's been opened up to some other degrees. That's why there's so many people on it. But so I'm here. I'm here every day at Easter.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, I come in the morning, you know, I smoke some crack, and I'm ready to go. So, you know, take advantage.
Yeah.
Don't go home. You won't get anything done in the Rhondda.
I do.
There's no fucking electric there for a start.
I didn't go home last year.
So, look, I appreciate that this is tough. I really get that. You know, it was tough for me when I was a third year a million years ago. Because nothing changes. It's the same focus, right? It's the same, it's the 2/3 of your degree, it's the most important part, etc. But there is help. The biggest problem over the last couple of years is third years don't actually ask for help. That is what I can see as the biggest problem. I can pinpoint 24 individuals who should have got a first over the last 2 years, who didn't get one, got a 2-1, because they didn't ask for help. It is that straightforward. And if you feel that you should be aiming for a first, and there are people in this room who definitely should be, by the way. In fact, all of you are capable. But some of you, in fact, no, not some of you, everyone should be asking for help to get over that hill. Because even if you can do it by yourself, still get the fucking help to do it. That's the most important thing. When it's available to you, use it. So please, 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 ask for help. It's the most important thing. One person has come to see me so far about this assignment coming up on December the 1st. Just one. And he's sitting there. And we kind of sorted it, didn't we?
Yeah.
You know what you're doing. You know. And I know what he's doing. And I'm happy with what Dan's doing with regards to, if it's done well, which I'm sure it is going to be, is that going to be worthy of 70 plus at a third year level? Yeah, I'm pretty confident that that's going to be the case. So I know exactly what you're doing, I know what you're drawing from, I know how you're going to structure it, I know what the story you're going to tell, I know the footage is going to be good because you've got experience of doing this already. I'm happy, I know he's going to do good. And a lot of these things take 5 minutes. So, Cheska, we were thinking about methodology, weren't we? I know I had to go away and look it up, but what was it? 5-10 minute conversation, really? You know, and that's sorted now. We know exactly what we're going to be, what you're going to be doing, not we. You're going to do it. I'm just going to help you. You know, it can be that straightforward. So 1 o'clock today, list all the things that you've got to do in the next few weeks, what you think is going to be the problem or multiple problems with each, and we will just tick them off. Right? Okay. Well, that was a lovely quarter of an hour to begin with. Are we all alright apart from stress? Everyone, is anyone going to watch the match tonight?
No.
What,
What
man?
do you mean no? What do you mean what match? I don't keep up with football. I don't. Wales' first World Cup game in 64 years.
How do you know it was football?
Not even I was alive last time they played in the World Cup. My father listened to it on the radio the last time they played in the World Cup. They didn't have a telly. It was 1958. So he's looking forward to it, although he'd be fucking paralytic by 7 o'clock, so he's not going to see much of it. Okay. I think today's lecture is reasonably straightforward, because it's something I felt we had to cover in this module, but the issue itself has been covered, and if you like, it's a debate that's been settled. This was a debate that raged at the beginning of game studies in, I'd say, the early 2000s, when game studies emerged as a discipline of its own. Previous to that, video games were discussed, and this gives you a clue as to why this was a debate. Prior to the early 2000s, when game studies became a discrete sort of discipline of its own right, it was difficult to talk about video games because people didn't know what they were. You had a series of disciplines that already existed, like film studies, television studies, etc. And the temptation was to try and shoehorn video games into those fields. They already existed. They had a research background, they had literature, so on and so forth. And especially in the 1990s, the big attempt was to try and consider video games as if they were cinema, to try and adapt cinema study, well, actually the other way around, try and adapt video games as if they were films, in order to consider them basically through narrative and narrative analysis. This is a spectacularly bad idea. Can anyone tell me, just from the offset, why you shouldn't take a narrative approach? If you consider that a narrative approach is the analysis of a text through its structure of story. So if you're taking a narrative approach to a film, what you're doing is looking at how that film has been structured in a particular way and using narratology theories in order to understand, you know, first act, second act, third act, role of character, etc., etc. Why doesn't that work for video games? Sure.
Because it's not as linear as film.
Very good point. Point one, video games are not as linear as film, or at least don't have to be. That's an important aspect, first of all. Video games don't have to follow linear narratives. But there's a reason why they don't have to follow linear narratives. This is basically a question of, what can video games do that films and television programs can't do? What is the thing that happens with a video game that doesn't happen in those others?
You control the narrative.
Exactly. Films, television, we are not in control of the narrative. We are presented with a narrative. I feel like we are passive in the face of the narrative that is given to us. Now, we engage with the narrative. If you're watching a film and you're enjoying it and you're engaged with it, you are, if you like, participating in the story, but you are not active in that participation. You are not an agent of the narrative. Video games, the critical difference here is that in video games, we have an agency in terms of the narrative itself. Our activities drive the narrative forward. Now, I don't want to say we create it, because video games are written. You know, they are written by someone else, but our actions power the narrative forward. Therefore, we have an embodiment in the narrative which doesn't happen in other texts. This is why narratology approaches to video games, while still out there, and I've got to be careful saying this in case she ever watches the video, but somebody who I work with for Multiplay Network, Steph Farnsworth, is a narratologist, so she'd kill me if I say narratology is dead. But what I would argue is that narratology is one aspect of how we can look at a video game, but it can't explain everything that happens in the game. We should pay attention to how games are written, because that's important. And narrative is a genuinely important thing. On that note, I finished Far Cry, right? Terrible narrative. Really just boring. Heard it all before. I powered up Grand Theft Auto Vice City for for the first time in probably 20 years. I only played for about an hour and a half. It shows its age, it really does. But it shows its age most in the story. The story is incomprehensible bollocks from beginning to end. It's like this drug deal goes down, and then the rest of it is you've got to make enough money to cover what you lost in the drug deal. But none of the parts of it make any sense whatsoever. It's absolutely hilarious. And the dialogue is so bad. And Danny Dyer's in it. I forgot. I must have repressed that from my memory. It's like Ray Liotta, Danny Dyer, and like Danny Dyer's hilarious in it, to be fair. But for a company that's supposed to be the Narratology company, that game sucks in terms of narrative. Is so horrendously bad. Most video games actually aren't good stories. Most video game stories are pretty bad. If you were to try and make a novel out of a video game, it would suck big time. That tells us something really important. Narrative, while an important aspect of a game, is very rarely the most important aspect of a game. It's very rarely the thing which is invested in the greatest amount of time or effort in when people are putting games together. It's, you know, the title of this, I'm just trying to be clever, right? What am I referring to with the ping pong ball?
Pong.
Pong, yeah. I had to write an essay when I was in detention in school, right? 500 words on the sexual life of the inside of a ping pong ball. Oh yeah.
Ow.
Well, what happened was, right, you used to have to write lines in detention when I was
Yeah.
in school, 100 lines. And this idiot, I thought, of a teacher came in and didn't write anything on the board. She just said 100 lines. So I got a piece of paper and I drew 100 lines on the piece of paper, straight lines, and just gave it to her and said, I'm done, I'm going. And she went spare, all right? She went absolutely spare. And then that was the essay she gave me to write. The only thing I could think of was writing about Pong and trying to make the ball in Pong a character in some sort of erotic fantasy. For this woman was obviously very sexually repressed. She wanted me to feed her lines.
Oh my.
So yeah. So I just came to me with, I was thinking of a title for this. Who's Arthur Morgan?
Red
From
Dead
Red
Redemption
Dead.
2.
Excellent. Your buddy.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to know what
I like
what's the best game story you guys have experienced, and what, but importantly, why?
Oh.
And if you've got more than one, please give me a feel. I had to try and think of this myself. I've come up with a really predictable answer, but I think it's a good one. So glad it's quiet in here. I went to a concert last night. I can't hear anything. It's my first gig in 3 years. I'm deaf. Properly deaf. And I broke my cardinal rule as well. Never drink before teaching. I broke it. You don't skip the cutscenes. You're adding about 30 hours to the game.
It's the only bit I can do.
They are well made, to be fair. Do you think one was better than the other, Dawson?
I think second was better than the first.
Why?
I
I agree, by the way, but I'd love to know your take on it.
don't know, I think it just, I don't know, one had a really good story, but the second one was, I just personally found it more interesting, because I like the way they switch. I actually, by the end, liked Abby.
Yeah, I think if you would have asked me the same question in reverse, I would kind of go with that I think they did more with the character,
Yeah. They
which
made it,
gave you more attachment and
also-
investment in it.
yeah, you started hating Abby at the start, and then by the end, I
Yeah.
didn't look at her.
I mean, I kind of rushed through two in a big hurry, and I need to go back to it really, but yeah, I was cut scene skipping a lot of that game, but I need to really go back to it. But even with that, I think it was a better story.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's everyone. Final Fantasy VII, released 1996?
7, 6?
7
Yeah.
maybe? So old, has been remastered a million times. Explain to the good people in here, anyone else played this game? No? So Morgan, explain to the people here, what is this story?
Okay. Pretty long, so I'll try to do a bit of a summary. Right, so it's Final Fantasy VII is set in this futuristic kind of dystopia. So you start off in this city called Midgar, right? And it's pretty much controlled by this evil corporation called Shinra. These guys are like, you know, the typical, like, evil, stereotypical fossil fuel company. And you play as a ragtag team of terrorists, shall I say, who obviously oppose Shinra. And they, one of the first things that you do in the game is you blow up one of their reactors.
Yeah.
Where they extract energy from. And you mainly play this character called Cloud. And he's an ex-Shinra soldier who now hates the regime. And he's joined up with these like terrorists. So the whole story is basically trying to defeat Shinra, trying to escape Shinra at times from going outside of Midgar, and basically just kind of exploring the world around it. And you meet a lot of characters as well, and you get really, really, really engaged with these characters, so when one of them dies, you feel it.
Okay.
And this game
Stop,
is long.
stop.
Right? Go on.
Because you ticked off all the boxes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Final Fantasy VII has one thing. It has a discernible story. How is that story constructed? One, it has a scenario. Yeah. So and it does a really good job right at the beginning of setting the scenario up, so you know clearly what it is you're doing, where it is you are doing it, and what the purpose of the game is for. You know, in terms of narrative, it gives you a lot at the beginning. This is a technique, unsurprisingly, Final Fantasy VII is a Japanese game, developed in Japan. Japanese games in particular in the 80s and 90s kind of perfected this technique of scene setting at the beginning in order to involve players within the story. And it really didn't start in Western development until around the same time that Final Fantasy came out, but it was a technique which was borrowed basically from Japanese games at the time. Secondly, character. So there are discernible points of character which you can identify with. One, you largely play as the same character throughout. Not exclusively, but largely you play as the same character throughout. So you are rooted within one character. You are given a backstory, very important. Characters that have a history tend to be ones that we can relate to better, as long as that history is given to us in a meaningful way. Because giving a history then gives a projection as to where this character is going. We can almost predict the character arc that is coming in. So when we are playing, it's like we are intentionally aiming towards it. And classically in Final Fantasy VII, you have a kind of redemption story, which is a classic trope used in characters in video games. The character was, but you know, something is on a mission to redeem themselves through our activity in the game. On the flip side of having a playable character, you have non-playable characters who are meaningful, also very important in terms of narratology. These non-playable characters are characters that we have meaningful relationships with in terms of our character as well. That develops the game world itself. And that's my third point. The game takes place in a discernible world. There is storytelling that goes on in order to develop this world. So as you say, you've got a city in Final Fantasy VII. There is the indication that there is things going on beyond that city as well. So it exists, you know, it's not isolated in some weird sense. And the city itself is a meaningful place for us to spend time within. You know, things which happen in that city, we understand them because we have a history of that place. Our actions are meaningful in them. One of the problems with Cyberpunk 2077 as a game is that the city is boring. The place where things take place in that game is really dull. It shouldn't be. It should look amazing. And it kind of visually, it does look amazing, especially if you play on PS5 or one of that level of machines or on a high-end PC. It does look incredible. But it's empty. It's dull. It's kind of staid and arid. Nothing really happens there. It's repetitive, your interactions with people. Final Fantasy, which, let's be fair, it's like 4 console generations ago, really. They invested a lot of time and effort in the place itself and what happens in that place. One of the, I mean, it was really funny, but Friday night I was playing Grand Theft Auto, the old one, and the city, which is Vice City, is bizarre. It's funny, but it takes the realism out of it. It's like non-playable characters dive in front of your car when you're driving around. I know it's a game glitch, because actually the game it's got really poor contact detection, and even though I'm not close to them, the game is picking up that I'm running them over. But in order for that to be enacted in the game, literally people just dive into your car all the time. It's funny the first time it happens, and I was like, that's amazing, and I've just splattered them. And then after a while I was like, get the fuck out of the way of my car, like I'm trying to drive you, you know? Stop bringing the police sirens on me all the time. I'm not even close to you, stop it, you know? So those elements in terms of narrative are absolutely critical to good games. And if you subtract some of those elements, so if you think, my character is not interesting, the non-playable characters are not interesting, the storyline is 1, not engaging, or 2, not plausible, you know, it's not well realised, or the place in which this is taking place isn't well realised in itself. You pull any of those away and the effect on the game itself is quite profound. You start thinking, this is kind of pointless. You know, this game isn't enjoyable for X, Y, and Z. So you remove a lot of the enjoyability from games if you remove those. It does depend on the genre of the game you're playing in. So an RPG, for example, needs a lot of development of the narrative. If you're playing like an old school beat 'em up, right? So I play a lot of Streets of Rage, okay, which is out in what, 1990, I think. The story is pathetic. You know, a child could have written this story on the back of a packet of cards. You know, it's got like 5 lines to the story, but it doesn't really matter in that because all you're setting up is your character to go and beat up loads of people. We don't need a great story for that to work, you know. So, depending on the game we have. Now, as console generations have got better and more sophisticated, and you have the ability to have larger, more complex, longer games, those elements of story have become critically important. In order to support a game that is going to engage you for between 30 to 60 hours, something like Last of Us 2, for example. Now, well, a reasonable playthrough of that, I'm guessing, is about a 45-hour shift. If you know, I wouldn't suggest you do it in one go, but you know, over a couple of weeks, that's probably the amount of time you're going to have to put in to get to the end.
you have got to invest a lot of time and effort into the story for that, because to put that amount of commitment into something, you need to be drawn in. So, at the same time, Last of Us 2 kind of works best because it's good to play. If you like, the ludic aspect, the mechanics of play itself are very, very effective. You can have a brilliant story, but if the game is not, I don't mean difficult in terms of it's like Dark Souls difficult, which are, those games are fucking impossible. But I mean, it's hard to control. It's not fun to play. You know, the actual mechanics of playing are boring or dull. I'll give you an example of this from the last few years. There was a zombie game came out called Days Gone. Has anyone played this?
No, I haven't heard of it.
What did you make of it?
I enjoyed it, to be fair. I can see why people would say it's quite clunky, like,
That was my problem with it. I was really intrigued by the setup. It visually is really cool. I find it really, really boring.
yeah, to be fair, I never finished it.
It was so repetitive, and I didn't find the controls were really difficult. It's like even after a couple of hours, I was struggling with the controls. I was like, I'm not having fun, and I kind of shelved it. I got it for free anyway, you know, on PSN. So, yeah, so I wasn't too gutted that I hadn't spent any money basically. So I think if you look across these, Halo Reach, does it have all those key elements? I think so. I think it puts in a lot of time. The Halo series in general has put a lot of time into developing those elements and developing a mythology. And certainly with Final Fantasy as a series, that idea of there being a mythology of the series is really important. Last of Us 1 and 2 does this as well. Certainly, nearly all the Rockstar games build mythologies around them. Red Dead 1 and 2 are really interesting because they dovetail in the reverse direction. If you now go back and play Red Dead Redemption after playing Red Dead Redemption 2, the first scene in Red Dead Redemption actually makes a lot of sense because it literally follows on, I think it's about a month after the end of Red Dead Redemption 2, or 2 months or something like that. It actually makes sense in that context. Assassin's Creed games do a huge amount of world building. I find them kind of dull at the beginning when you first start playing them because it's too much, I think, very often, but I understand why they do it. Yeah, definitely Last of Us 1 and 2. Elder Scrolls, yeah, same sort of thing. Witcher, as you say, based on novels. I've played very little Witcher, I'll be honest, but I understand why they work very, very well. I get it. And yeah, you know, RDR2, you know, it was the one thing that was applauded for. The story of Red Dead Redemption 2, if you wrote it down, there are plot holes in it that you could drive a bus through. But you kind of don't care because you're involved in it in a different way, so you don't see it. But the purpose of the story is to engage you, rather than, you know, to win Oscars for best screenplay or anything like that. Okay, on the flip side, what's the worst story you've ever encountered? I don't mean non-existent, because there's lots of games that have no story. I mean, Tetris doesn't have a story. It's an amazing game, but it has no discernible story.
Go on. What about every single thing?
I thought it was shit, Far Cry 5. Story-wise. I actually kind of enjoyed playing it, but the story sucked. There was no payoff. After all that time, there was literally no payoff.
Yeah.
I felt cheated at the end.
I felt that the secret ending at the beginning was actually better.
Yeah,
When
agree,
you-
yeah.
when you just wait around for like 15 minutes and then you say, actually just leave.
the problem was, it was kind of cool, the whole thing, of like religious nut jobs and you're taking them on, but
I like that idea of fighting cults, but I think the way they did it was incredibly bad. I mean, the
I agree.
three siblings, I don't remember any of their names, and I thought they were just rubbish. The one had like that,
one was Joseph,
that was the ringleader.
that was the ringleader, Seed was the name of the
Yeah.
family, wasn't it? I can't remember the other two now.
There's three of them. There's four altogether.
Four there is, yeah.
Yeah, so, but I thought they were crap. And I thought they had a lot of good ideas they could have executed with Joseph, but
The whole thing felt like it was done in a rush. And, I'm guessing that was the studio wanted the game out and they didn't have enough time to finish it, so they put an end in, which finished it. And it was like, it sucked, basically. I wish there was like a patch for that game where they changed the ending, basically, and you could have a better ending, but again, I don't think I paid for it, so who am I to complain? That's controversial, man. The greatest platform game in the history of, well, Super Mario 3, I suppose it is, but
Yeah. At least that has some form of story.
better than Super Mario, the
Yeah.
initial one, yeah, that's true. Okay, Dawson, take me through your thinking on this.
Now, I was a COD Zombie super fan from like World of War, Black Swan, Black 2, Black 3. Black Ops Forward, they basically tried like make a new storyline along with the old storyline. The new storyline was like forgettable anyway, and then they kind of just tried to put them both together.
So how to ruin a
And
thing.
then, like, that storyline was one of the best, honestly, in games.
That is a hot take. Red Dead 1 has got bad. That would be my one for the best video game storyline.
It's a
of all time.
good story, but it just ruins it right at the end.
Yeah, but you don't have redemption without consequence. I think there's a moral message in the game. I know, right? Obviously, I've played it a couple of times, and I know what happens. Didn't you think the bit with his son is interesting afterwards?
No,
Okay.
because you play as John Marston, like, this guy. I love John Marston.
I was thinking about it. I like the storyline of Red Dead Redemption 1. It's profoundly racist. The whole bit in Mexico is really dodgy.
Yep.
And as how just so many stereotypes of like, it's basically like a gringo. It's really bad. It's really dodgy.
stereotypical.
So many stereotypes of Mexicans in it. And I think there's a little bit of why Fable 3.
It was just so rushed, and it's so annoying because the story and the lore was so good, and then they just, I don't know.
It's an interesting one because it kind of created that series.
It was
And,
so good, but
Especially Fable 1 was, when it came out, that was what everyone said about it. The story of Fable 1 is
it was amazing.
one of the best stories ever made in a video game. And they kind of, I think there's a theme that runs with Black Ops 4 with this, Fable 3, Far Cry 5 definitely. Fallen Order is a game I've not played, but I've heard this complaint about it a lot. I don't tend to play Star Wars games, but rushed. It's a thing over and over again. Games, when we do the last lecture of the module, I'll get on to what that means in terms of development and the economic imperatives of gaming that mean that a lot of games, especially now, do get rushed out, where they're incomplete, and you can see where the parts that are incomplete affect the quality of the game, and it nearly always, incomplete games come down to two things which are bad. One, glitching, So the game actually hasn't been built that well right from the ground up. So technically it's not very good, and it needs endless number of patches in order to get it playable. And 2, the story has been rushed. It's like they've not had enough time to develop it in order to get it out. Storytelling in games is different to storytelling in a film or television program. When you are telling a story in a film, for example, you write the film before you start producing it. It makes no sense to greenlight, well, this does happen, this happens a lot with superhero movies, that they actually greenlight the film before the script has been written. Because money, it's going to get back, so you can do this. But usually you will have a script and then you will say, right, we're going to make this film based on this script. Games very often don't work in this way. You start making the game and then you start scripting it. What happens when you crunch the time that this can be done in is that the script starts to fall apart because you're under pressure to actually match it up to what the game plan is in certain ways. So it does happen a fair bit. I mean, Quantum of Solace, is it bad a film?
Yeah.
I don't watch James Bond films because I'm not 12.
James Bond films I've watched. It's one of the worst.
People do say it's really, really bad and boring.
Yeah.
And the game was as bad and
The
boring.
game, yeah, the game's like, it takes clips from other films like Casino Royale and stuff to actually
Okay.
make it interesting. So, even
It's
if
basically our
the game's
source
like-
material is shit, so we're
Yeah.
going to use different source material. Okay. That's awesome.
yeah.
It's like, I'm going to make a film about the Terminator, but here's some clips from Aliens, because this game is really bad. That's pretty awesome. Okay, so we get a kind of idea. There are essential things to a narrative that make a game work, and if they don't occur correctly, the game itself has a feel to it which is not great. So you can start to trace some of these elements individually. In terms of character, first of all, character is not discernible until the early 80s. Pac-Man is the first real game character that exists. Donkey Kong in 81 is the first character that is actually built with cutscenes, although, I mean, you can YouTube this, the cutscenes from Donkey Kong, they're hilariously amateur and really, really bad. But they discernibly are cutscenes, which fill in storyline. The first emergence, I'd say, of the most popular game narrative that there is, the damsel in distress, is in 82 Donkey Kong Jr., where Mario is introduced as a character for the first time, and you get the very problematic presentation of women in games, which is women are useless, women can't be trusted to look after themselves, you have to have a small Italian plumber come along to save the woman. And he does this by eating mushrooms. That there is a whole psychedelic thing going on in Mario, which people often don't get. It is so obvious that Mario is tripping balls, but I don't know why people can't see that when they're actually going through it. So when you begin digital games, there is no discernible story. Story was not seen as important until the 1980s, basically. Why? Because these are games. It's about play rather than developing story. That is still a critically important aspect of it. Now, you can still have games which I would question whether you can even call these things a game, because they are so narrative driven that I don't think you do anything. And therefore, is it even a game that you're playing? So the early, basically Ludology is the classic thing at the beginning of video games. Narratology isn't an aspect of games at all. Although, you do get bonkers people who start inventing stories about the ping pong ball, like my great essay on sexual life of the inside of the pong ball, and things like Space War, where you would kind of fill in the gaps as to why you're doing this by creating a storyline in your head for why you might be doing this. But there are no discernible stories to these things. Now we exist in this rich, fully storied environment for games, but is it due to narrative is actually a very important question. Always keep this in mind. games are played, not watched. But I raise a question here. What does experiencing games through platforms like Twitch mean for that? Games are played, not watched. Do we now watch more than we play? Why? What is the point? I consume
don't
so
know.
little content on that platform. Why do we watch? It's not that hard a question. I'd love to know why.
Well, the sense for me is like, oh, someone's playing like, I don't know, the new God of War or whatever, and I don't have a PS5, nor do I have access to God of War. So I was like, oh, okay. I'll
Get
watch.
one! Get a PS5.
No,
They're great.
they're like 500 quid.
It's 500 quid well spent.
I'm not getting VR this
Steal one.
Christmas anyway, so I can't.
What are you getting?
MetaQuest 2.
I could have given you one of them. I've got 6 of them in the office.
Oh.
There's literally got 6 in the office doing nothing. But it'll be good. You'll enjoy it. Anyone else consume a lot on these platforms, YouTube or Twitch?
I guess it's kind of like why do people watch Gogglebox? It's more for like watching.
That's
stuff
an
like
interesting comparison.
Reaction.
a reaction, yeah, rather than you're watching the person playing it, not the actual game itself.
Okay. Okay. Does it replace playing for anyone?
No.
No. Okay.
Only in certain contexts. Like if I can't play it.
Okay, so if it's something which is unavailable to you, this
Yeah,
is a
for example,
replacement
like
to
what we
it.
said with God of War, I'm not going to have a chance to play that, but I'm watching people play it, so I know the story.
Okay, that's interesting in itself.
I watch a lot of like Overwatch players on Twitch, but that's more like not for the story, but for like picking up skills and stuff in that genre.
Training.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I do occasionally will go and watch things, not necessarily on Twitch, but on YouTube. If I get stuck somewhere, I will look up how people have played through particular things in order to get some tips on it. And I do get stuck often because I'm kind of shit. But yeah, I just thought it was an interesting thing to raise here. Do we actually play that much anymore? Are we watching? Narrative, story and plot together. Plot and story are two different elements which we often confuse. Why do you think I'm separating them out? What is the difference between a story and a plot?